Hi, it's Matt Wellborn here. Today I'm going to show you guys how to install VMware Player along with Linux, or Linux Virtual Machine. In this case, I'm going to be running Linux Mint Release Candidate 15. But the process is pretty much the same for every type or any Linux distribution you want to do, especially the main one. That's pretty simple. So anyways, let's get started here. So first thing you're going to need is VMware Player. So to get that, just go to a browser, open Google or something, just type VMware Player. It's pretty most likely your top result. Hit download, and then you're going to go ahead and just select based on your operating system, of course. I'm running Windows 64-bit, in this case Windows 8. So that's probably what you're going to do. Just hit download and you'll be on your way. And you will end up with that little guy right there, VMware Player. And in my case, I'll just show you, I said again, I'm using Linux Mint, which at the time of this point, they have the release candidate for Linux Mint 15. So you just go ahead, figure out what you want. I just went ahead and downloaded Cinnamon 64-bit. So let's go ahead and get really started. So again, installing VMware Player, just go ahead and double click that. Yes on the security warning. So this is going to be really basic on this part of it. Say next. I'm fine with that. If you want to check for updates, it's true. Since they provide this free, I always like to send anonymous system data for the most part. It's usually pretty harmless. Or, from my understanding, it's almost always harmless. It's anonymous. Okay. And if you want shortcuts, you can do that. Continue, and we're off. So while this is installing, I'll go ahead and mention that the other option would be using Oracle VirtualBox. However, I've just found that I prefer VMware Player. It has a couple features that I like personally, but you can definitely go the other route. I've used both, and they both work fine. I just have a few preference over this one. Okay. So again, one important thing when you're doing this is to pay attention to whether you're going to be running a 64-bit or 32-bit. Start thinking about how much memory you want to allocate to your virtual machine. You need to consider your disk space if that's a problem for you. And okay, so that's done. So I'm just going to go ahead and start it up here. It's just right on my desktop. Just going to launch it. Minimize this. Alright, so this is the main interface here for VMware Player. So just to get going here, I'm just going to create a new virtual machine. And this will depend on if you have an image selected. I actually already have an image, so I'm just going to go ahead and you need to hit I have an image and ISO. You go find it, you hit open, and then it's going to pretty much auto run this when you start your virtual machine. Okay, so we'll head next. So my guest operating system is going to be Linux. So Linux Mint, I don't even think is on their list. But it is a derivative of Debian, which really it's a derivative of Ubuntu in this case. So I'm just gonna go ahead and pick Ubuntu 64-bit. It's the closest thing. Let's go ahead and hit next. So I'm gonna name it Linux Mint. I'll also name it 64, so I remember it's 64-bit. And the location is gonna be where your virtual machine is gonna be stored, where your virtual hard drive is gonna be. I'm going to change that because I have a whole other hard drive from which to put my data on. Okay, I'm put in a VM. I'm going to make a new folder for it. A virtual machine has several files associated, so I always like making a new folder if I want to make more than one virtual machine in the future. It just helps organization. So I call it Linux Mint 64. And open. Alright, looks good. So space. So again, this is going to be very dependent on how much space you have available on your computer. I always tend to put it at 60. You probably don't even need that much. I've never used it, but I don't know, I've kind of defaulted over that in the past. I always like to store it as a single file. I know it says it's easier to move and stuff. I'm never going to be worried about that really going to another computer. And I don't know how I don't know. I don't really know about that. I always like when it's a single file. It makes it clean and tidy. Okay, so here we're going to start picking out your hardware layout. So I'm going to hit customize. So for memory on this, I'm going to give it 4,000. I'm going to give it 4 gigs. So this is going to be very reliant on your computer setup. I have a 16 gig, 8 core processor computer, so I have lots of stuff to spare. Processor, I'm just going to make it a quad core. Then your CD don't have to worry about, floppy don't worry about. Network is something I'd worry about. So you can use NAT, which is pretty much your virtual machine is kind of masked behind your host IP address. Host being the computer you're running the VM on. I don't like that. I like to use bridged. This will pretty much make it so your VM will get its own IP address. So like say, 192.168.1.18, and your host, the computer you're running on, will also have a separate IP address. So I prefer to do that. Otherwise, you really don't have to touch much of this other stuff unless you have something special in mind. So I'm just going to close that. Hit finish. Alright, so you can see here we have my virtual machine now. It's powered off. It says it's Ubuntu 64-bit. That's fine. It's really not going to be, but it's all good. So now let's go ahead and hit play. So now what we're doing, this is going to boot up. So this is going to do this download and install thing. So you really can't do that until the guest operating system. So to be clarified, guest operating system is the operating system you're running in the virtual machine. So you really can't do this until the guest operating system is installed. So just hit remind me later right now. Okay, so again, what this ISO is, and what most Linux distributions do now, is they have what's called, live installs, or live environments pretty much, where the idea is it loads the operating system into memory and gives you pretty much a demo environment of the system. So that's what it's loading up right now. So yeah, so here you go. So make sure you click inside the window, and that'll give you access to your mouse. So again, you can see this little live environment. It's a full-blown environment. I can open up applications if I want to. I can do stuff. But obviously, right now it's really not what we're trying to do. We're trying to install. So on the desktop for Linux Mint, they just put a little install disk. Some Linux versions are different. Most of them do something of this nature. If you're using a live CD, so just go ahead and double click. And this will begin taking you through the install process. So go ahead and select your language. Most of this is just going to be next. So here it's saying, okay, yeah, you got 6 gigs of available drive space and you're connected to the internet. That's what these checkboxes refer to. Okay, and this is pretty much dealing with your hard disk. Pretty much you just want to erase the disk and install Linux Mint. I just keep it pretty basic. You don't really have to worry about any of this other stuff for now unless you have some reason to. I guess, if you're going to take snapshots or anything or doing partition resizing, but I'm going to keep it really basic on this one. Alright, this is just go ahead and pick your time zone. I live in Boise. Okay. So again, just more keyboard layout. If you're in the US, it's pretty much fine. Assuming you don't speak different language or stuff like that. Alright, so this is going to be your name. Okay, computer name. I just name it virtual. Okay, username. Go ahead and pick a password. Okay. And then here is kind of interesting. So if you want, you can have the system log you in automatically when it starts up, or you can have it require a password when you log in. I always like to have my passwords. If you want to encrypt the home folder, you can. If you have security issues. Okay. Oh, and you can see also down here now we have this thing. It's like, oh yeah, you need to install the tools. So you just kind of leave it there until we're done installing. And I'll show you how that process works. So this is kind of the boring part, right? Just watching bars move, so it's a good time. But as you can see, for people who haven't really done anything with Linux, the install process is much different than it was probably 10 years ago, or probably even 5 years ago. It's just super easy. It's same ease as Windows, I would say, for the install. And even gives you some sweet advertisements for Hulu and stuff like that. And just to, maybe you say, well, why use Linux Mint? I've tried some other distributions, and I just haven't quite liked them as much as I liked Debian-based distros for one, and then Linux Mint. I've just always kind of gravitated toward it after I've tried it. Started out with like Ubuntu, then went over to some other stuff. I even used Arch, which is a distro pretty much we have to build up from scratch. Tried some other stuff, and I always keep coming back to Linux Mint. So here we are with Linux Mint. I guess another point is, people might ask, why aren't you actually just installing this on your full-blown computer? Well, for one, I'm a gamer, and gaming, it's starting to make more progress for more higher up quality titles, thanks to Valve and their push into having Steam on Linux platform. But it's still not quite there. And personally, I think driver support for Linux is still lacking a little bit. So now I just kind of compromise and I just run in a VM, which works perfect for me. So at this point, you can also, if you want, you can just go ahead and skip ahead in the video. I'm just going to show you the full-on deal here. But yeah, feel free to just skip ahead and do what you need to do. Obviously, downloading language packs for 2 minutes isn't the best thing to watch, but I like the idea of making edit-free videos in a way, so you can kind of so you don't see skipping around. So, I suppose another thing to keep in mind when you're installing distribution like this is it's full featured for the most part. In other words, it's going to have all the software you will need to for a basic computer setup. You know, for example, LibreOffice is pretty much, I think at this point now, it's the most used Office suite for open source. It used to be, it was called OpenOffice until they'd had their whole thing going on. But anyways, yeah, it's gonna have, you know, something that does Excel, type functions, Word, anything like that. You know, and here's some more featured software. This is software you have to install, but alright. So now it's done installing to the disk. So we're still in our live environment, so I mean that's all good. But really, so now what we have to do is get out of the live environment so we can boot up from the virtual disk. So go ahead and hit restart. Actually, don't do. Actually, no. Go ahead and restart. That'll be fine. Sorry about that. Okay. So here it's saying please remove the media and close the tray. So to get out of, so you know I can't get to my mouse to back to the desktop, you have to hit Control Alt on the right side of the keyboard. So on the right side of the space bar. And you'll see that pops up my mouse. So from here, just go ahead and hit, you know, player, removable devices, CD, DVD, hit settings, and just unclick it. Hit OK. And then go ahead and click back in it. You're going to lose your mouse and hit enter. So now we're rebooting. Okay. So keep in mind, right, is we're not going to be able to really maximize this window until we get these VMware tools installed. That allows, you know, better mouse integration and video stuff going on. Alright, so here we are in Linux Mint 15. So go ahead and type in your username and your password. Just gonna load up here. Alright, so make sure you don't want the welcome screen anymore, I'm sure. Alright, so here we go. We're in Linux Mint. This is the one running from our virtual disk. So the official install. Alright, so now that we're in here, now's a good time to go ahead and install the tools. So download and install. And like all downloads, it's going to take a minute. Only I could have faster internet where I live without a data cap. Alright, well, that's going on. Put that over here. Maybe we'll just kind of browse around here a little bit. So in Linux Mint, right, here's your start. Not really start, we should get rid of that term. Here's your menu button. And here's your, these are pretty much your categories that your applications are in. You know, so when I was talking like full featured, right, here's your LibreOffice suite. You know, internet, they start you off with Firefox, Thunderbird, and some messenger client. You got GIMP, some other programs. Your administration console, which has most of your, you know, your settings. Guessing think of like a Windows control panel almost. Accessories, use your basic, like a Notepad type program. It's called gedit. It's much better than Notepad, but that's what it is. Got your terminal, which is obviously what a lot of people fear of Linux and Unix type operating systems, because it's all terminal based, where as you can see from this GUI, it's not really the case anymore, right? I highly recommend, I mean, a lot of power lies in this terminal. and shell and bash, whatever you want to call it. So it's worthwhile to learn, which maybe I'll do that in some more videos later. But so you got your lock, your power, some of your system settings. Okay, it's kind of a quick tour. Your home folder. So your home folder, I might as well say this while we're doing this. It's pretty much equivalent to like your user folder in Windows. So like your my documents. Okay, if this happens, just go ahead and hit yes. So yeah, it's pretty much where you're gonna store your documents. So you can see, use your documents, your downloads, your pictures, your music. Very similar. Okay. All right, we're done here. So as I said, once that's done, it's going to pop this bad boy up. Now, you're not gonna be able to just double click this really. I mean, you could probably double click it and compress it, and then compress it somewhere if you really wanted to. Which is gonna. So let's go ahead and hit extract. Sorry, I haven't done this way in a while. I forgot about this part. Hit extract. Go to your folder. And I just put it under downloads. I like to put that kind of stuff under downloads. Hit extract. So you're going to show the files. Okay. So this is said it's a Perl file. You're going to have to run this to install it. Unfortunately, we're going to have to use the command line. Oh no, command line. In this case. So I'm just going to open up a terminal. You can open it from here. You can go to File, Accessories Terminal. So what you're going to do is, when you open a terminal, you're starting in your home directory. So in this case, you can type ls. You'll see your directories. Ls just pretty much means like list. So then cd is change directory. So I'm going to change my directory to downloads. So if you're typing it and you hit tab, it'll go over. Okay, or it'll autocomplete. So ls, there's our VMware folder. So just again, you're going to change the directory to VMware. ls, and there's your Perl, and it's already as an executable. So one thing you got to keep in mind when you're doing this, you're going to want to run it as root, as a root user. Which, again, most operating systems when they install, they're going to give you a sudo function, which means like super user do. One way to check that is to type in sudo. Alright, well obviously since it didn't say the program wasn't found or the command wasn't found, sudo is installed on this operating system. So yeah, we'll just go ahead and do that. Most distributions do that. If your distribution doesn't do that, you're going to have to do a switch user dash, which will pop you over to a root. You're going to have to enter your root password. And you can see now that my dealie here has changed. And that very much signifies your root. But in this case, I don't need to do that. Okay. And if you want to clear the screen, it's CLER. It's clear. Okay. So ls again. I need to run the VMware -install.pl. So to do that, you're going to do sudo // and VMware. And again, you can use tab to autocomplete. Okay. Let's go ahead and enter. Enter your password for your account. Okay, and so most of this stuff is just all you're going to allow it to do the default. The default is going to be what's in the square brackets. So like in this case, this user bin here is the default. And yeah, so for the most part, I recommend just using the defaults. Again, I just use the defaults. So I'm going to do that. So then at this point, since say, okay, well, you need to configure it after the install. It's just saying I'm going to run this program to configure it. Do you want to do that? And so yeah, we do. And pretty much the configuration, you're just going to do more of the same thing. So most of the stuff, again, I just leave unless you know that you need something. Just go ahead and keep the defaults for the most part. And again, same thing. Defaults are in square brackets. Kernel headers. So I know some of this looks scary, so don't worry about it. There's people spend a lot of time doing this kind of stuff. So this one is kind of relevant, so if you're gonna try to share folders between your host OS and your guest OS, you can do that. This is one I actually typed no because I really don't care about sharing my folders. If you do, you can maybe read up on that. Something I'm not gonna cover in this video though. Okay, and I do want to enable dragging and dropping. Actually, in one hand, I'm not actually sure about this. I forgot to look into this. So it says between a Fusion or workstation virtual environment. I'm not sure if that's referring to a different program that they own, which I actually do believe it is. So this might not actually work, but we'll see. Like to enable. So again, some of the stuff you don't really know, just go ahead and use the default. Then print. I don't really care about printing for my VM. Alright, so now it's saying it's done. Looks like the eject failed of the actual tools. So pretty much it's saying, up here it's saying, to enable these features, you're going to have to either manually start VMware user, log in or log out, and restart your X session. So I tend to just log in and log out. I've actually never tried just starting VMware user. I'm just going to go ahead and try that just for the fun of it. So again, it's going to be sudo, and you're just going to, I don't like anything. Never mind, I'm just going to restart. So actually I'm not going to do it that way, I'll do it the easier way. Just go to start, power, and hit restart. Okay. Alright, now it's restarting. So again, remember, if you want to get your mouse back so you can browse around in your Windows OS or whatever OS you're using, Control Alt is the default. Alright. So you're going to see one thing here, right? So usually this full screen thing won't happen until you actually log in. That should show you now. Full screen. There you go. And sometimes it takes a little bit to adjust, but yeah. So now we're in full screen. Your mouse will move back and forth a little bit better. You really don't have to worry about the Control Alt shortcut. And you have a virtual machine. So at this point, if you know what you're doing, you can stop. One thing I would recommend is go ahead and look down here. This is just Linux Mint. It says I have updates. Any type of ISO you're using have updates right out of the fly. So I'd go ahead and recommend installing those, and then just enjoy using Linux. Alright, thanks very much for watching.